Welcome back, everyone, to the Rink Masters podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Kroom. I'm joined with Chris and Noah. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I'm not going to say what I was going to say because Chris is here this week. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty good. It's been a good week and ready to get this started.
Right on. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, doing well. Just mucking down some cereal, ready to get going about talking about some NHL awards and what we think so far midway through the season.
Awesome. That's great. And so we know with that, we're going to get on to the NHL awards. And then after that, we are going to be talking a little bit about the NHL Draft Lottery system and share our thoughts on that. So we're going to start it off. We're going to start off with the Selke. Chris, who do you think's going to win the Selke this year at this point in time?
There's a lot of good options. I think probably top three for me. I don't like to normally pick like some of the obvious guys, so to speak. So I'm going to say my one is Anze Kopitar. I feel like he's been excellent in LA so far. Tyler, one of your favorites, Mark Stone. I like him as well for the Selke. And another one that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, Andrew Mangiapane for Calgary, are my top three for the Selke so far.
Yep, no, those are good picks. What about you, Noah? Who do you got down for the Selke?
Well, I definitely have Mark Stone as well. I mean, I think that this is the season that he'll finally get the recognition that he deserves. I saw an interesting post earlier this year. It was like most overrated player in the NHL, and it had Mark Stone. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Like, this guy's good. He's very strong defensively, and that's who you need to win that trophy. And he's also very strong offensively. I think he's over a point a game this year on a very good Vegas team. So, I mean, obviously he has to be in there. And I also had Anze Kopitar. He's had an amazing season. I think that's the best way of putting it. And that Kings team is in the hunt for the playoffs. I believe they're sitting just outside a playoff spot right now. I think they're just outside of it, but
And they won
can
tonight.
Definitely, yeah. So
they're right there. Like, I think they're like not even a stone's throw. I think they're basically a point out or something like that right now.
yeah, and that division's very close right now. So yeah, I think that Anze Kopitar definitely needs to be in that conversation. He's had a real bounce back year.
No, definitely. Of course, I've got Mark Stone on my list too, although I don't have him at number one. This is a guy actually that Noah was very critical about last year was Leon Draisaitl. Noah claimed that he can't play defense. Well, I would argue this year Leon Draisaitl has been the Oilers' best defensive player, and I think one of the top defensive players in the league. Meanwhile, keeping his offensive pace, but I think Leon Draisaitl could win it this year. I have him as my number one for the Selke. A very close second is Mark Stone. And then at third, I have Alexander Barkov out of Florida.
Oh, yeah, he's also on there for sure.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
Actually, Tyler, I'm glad you brought up Leon Draisaitl because I have to say he has really solidified this year defensively in a very volatile Canadian division. So, I mean, I have to give him respect there, respect where it's due. So, good job, Leon. You proved me wrong.
Yep.
Not that you really care, but you did. So
and what were you gonna say about there, Chris?
No, I just agreeing with you on that. I think watching the Canadian division a lot, you don't necessarily think about the guys like McDavid and Draisaitl to be, excellent in their own end. But when you really pay attention to those fine details, they're pretty well always in the right position. You don't see them turning the puck over often. I've only seen one game where both him and McDavid have been really like turning the puck over. So they're super good in their own end, making breakout passes, sticks in the right lanes. And that's what creates their offense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why, this year I think they've been one of the most dangerous teams to watch. I mean, even more so than last year, there's a little bit of inconsistencies within the lineup. This year, Edmonton, with the leadership of Draisaitl and McDavid in all zones has been astronomical.
I was also going to say, I think Tyson Barrie has been a bit of an underrated addition. I think he's really helped them out of the back. Like, you could say they don't need that, but I think they did need that. I think he's been a big difference for the Oilers this year.
I called this at the beginning when they signed him. He's going to greatly improve the transition game from the D zone out. You look at a lot of these stretch passes, Barry's making, he's making smart passes. And I think there's a reason why he's been unreal at both ends. And you look at the points he's putting up, Barry has solidified himself as a legit top pairing defenseman again with the Edmonton Oilers.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to the Hart Trophy, because I know this one's been pretty heated this year. And some actually goalie names thrown into the conversation and the ones that I've seen. So, Tyler, who do you have for the Hart?
First and foremost, I put down Patrick Kane. Chicago's been a team that, again, we've said before, they've been facing the most adversity heading into the year, and Patrick Kane has been the leading force of that offense. And I think he should win the Hart this year. Following him, I have Connor McDavid at second, and then Austin Matthews at third.
Yep. Well, that's good rankings. I wrote down a list of 5 guys. Now, obviously, some of this is based off of especially the last 2 months and kind of the push on towards the final if they can keep up this pace. But I have Patrick Kane at number 1 as well, and that Chicago team is also a team that's right in the battle for the playoff spot. So they're surprising a lot of people with that. I have Marc-Andre Fleury on there. I think that he's had an excellent season in Vegas, especially considering Leonard's been out for a while, right? And lots of people were concerned whether or not Fleury still had it in him to be a starter, and he's been right up there. He's been backstopping them extremely well. I also have Barkov in that conversation. Excellent player. I mean, he should be up for the Selke. And he's an excellent player again. Last year he had a bit of a down year, but I think he's back. I think that's safe to say. At least to many people, he had a down year as compared to the year before. And then I have 2 last ones of Connor McDavid. I mean, he can't not be in that conversation. He's leading the league in points. By how many is it now? He has quite a few more than Draisaitl, I thought, at this point. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Are you talking about Kane?
No, I'm talking about McDavid.
He is leading, like Connor McDavid's first in points, but I don't think the margin's that much at all.
I thought he had expanded a little bit. Okay, I might be wrong on that. And then I have Thatcher Demko. If the Canucks can somehow manage to squeak into the playoffs, Thatcher Demko absolutely needs to be in that conversation for the Hart. Like, I don't think that's up for debate. In the month of March, he's had 1 loss, and he's had north of, I believe, 0.4 save percentage, 0.94, sorry. And he has been amazing. I think that's the best way to put it for that team.
That's fair. Chris, who do you got?
I have a couple guys. We'll go with my kind of runner-ups for right now. One of them is obviously Kane, for the reasons we talked about. Another one is Anze Kopitar. I got him in that race as well. I think he's been really good. I think he's put LA in a really good spot. He's been the driving force of that team, along with Drew Doughty on the back end. I think they've really elevated their game in a year where I don't think a lot of people would have necessarily expected that. And as my number 1, I have McDavid. I mean, he's on, I think, a 145-point pace for an 82-game season. Far and away the most valuable player to his team. If you look at, you take him off the team, I mean, where is that Edmonton team? I don't think they're definitely nowhere close to where they are right now. So I have him as my number 1.
Well, I think in terms of McDavid, what was the stat, Tyler? Correct me if I'm wrong. Without McDavid or Draisaitl getting a point, the Oilers hadn't won a game, and I think it was 2 seasons.
Coming in this year, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they finally did it this year. So, I mean, yeah, McDavid is crucial to that team for sure.
Yeah.
I think the midseason awards for this one's pretty straightforward, especially looking ahead. The Art Ross. I think there's really only a few players in this conversation, and realistically only 2, which are McDavid and Draisaitl. So,
yeah,
I don't know if you guys have somebody else on that list.
No, The only way, I mean, Patrick Kane can jump those two is if he just explodes in the last half here, which really, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it at the same pace that McDavid's already going at right now. So I think it's safe to say it's going to be Connor McDavid taking the on Ross.
Unless some sort of injury happens, I think there's no way that anything changes in that race.
Yep.
I think we should move on to actually the Jack Adams.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Chris, who do you have for the Jack Adams?
Jack Adams, yeah, that's a good one. I think if Daryl Sutter gets the Flames in the playoffs, I think he's up for the conversation. Even though he's came in mid-season, he kind of took a dump. If he gets them in, he'll be taking a dumpster fire of a team into the playoffs. I think there's room for that. Another one would have to be Minnesota's head coach. I'm forgetting his name again. You guys can get me on that.
I'll look it up.
Okay,
I looked it up and then I just forgot.
Yeah, I'm blanking right now on that one.
Oh man, who is it?
It's Dean Evison.
Dean Evason. That's right. Yep. Couldn't put my finger on that one, but yeah, I think Dean Evason has taken a really talented Minnesota team that I don't think a lot of people talk about into a really good spot in their division, and a real surprise and a really fun team to watch too. So I've really been impressed with what he's done. He's used the Minnesota Wild, like their skill set, and he's really just let them play.
You brought up a really good point. They're actually exciting to play. I mean, when's the last time we could have said that about the Minnesota Wild in the last decade? Because they haven't been exciting, right? Like
they've just been mediocre.
Purely mediocre. And even when they brought in guys like Suter and Parise, like they still weren't exciting to watch. And you bring in Kaprizov, you have Kakkonen net. This team has kind of started to reach their full potential with these young players, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with them. And you guys can go ahead. I think those are my two.
I actually had Barry Trotz.
Yeah.
The New York Islanders went on a run. I believe it was 9 straight wins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, we've talked about it many times. That is not a team that they don't have the best assets. Like they have some pretty poor cap management there. And I think if you just look on paper, they're a mediocre roster. Like they're not bad, but they're also not excellent. No. And Barry Trotz is making them look excellent. They're right at the top of the division. So, I mean, yeah, I think he should be right up there for the Jack Adams. I also have Peter Laviolette. He's really helped that team out in Washington. So, I mean, they're top of the division, and they were looking not that strong going into this year. So that's actually been really impressive from him turning around that team. And then I also have John Cooper, just because Tampa Bay's a powerhouse. And yeah.
So this is a hard one for me. I actually picked 5 coaches to put in the conversation because it was hard. I think there's been a lot of coaches that have done a lot of really good things. On number 1, I've got Barry Trotz. I mean, you mentioned it there, like their assets aren't strong. In fact, I think they lost some key players heading into this year that they didn't really replace. They don't have Devon Taves, and to that back end, he was a very key player there. They haven't missed him one bit. Varlamov has looked excellent. The defense has played good. Their star players have played like star players, and their rep depth guys have just managed to just keep up and be able to support the starting cast. And again, that's just Barry Trotz working his magic, and it's pulling it off once again. I also have Rod Brind'Amour in here with the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes have looked really good this year, and Brind'Amour has done a fantastic job with the team they've had there. They've had some goaltending difficulty too. Mrazek went down. Reimer wasn't exactly he was solid for some games. He's a little bit inconsistent. Nedeljkovic actually has brought a little bit more consistently as of late, but overall, I think Brind'Amour's done a really good job with Carolina. And then I've got Joel Quenneville for Florida at number 3.
That's what I forgot about.
Yeah, that Panthers team, I mean, it's kind of the same lines as Minnesota. They've been fun to watch. and they weren't expected to be as good as they have been. So yeah, no, he's definitely put himself in that conversation. And then I've also got Sheldon Keefe in Toronto. That Toronto team has looked really good this year, and I think that he just deserves some recognition for it.
Yep, that's good. So you kind of mentioned a few of the players actually. Who do you have for the Calder at this point? This is a bit of a different Calder race than we've had the last few seasons. So who do we have in that conversation?
Well, you see, I've got Kirill Kaprizov at number 1 on that list. I think there's really been no rookie better than him this year up until this point. Followed actually by his Minnesota teammate, Kaapo Kähkönen. I think he's been excellent with Minnesota, and he could very easily be in that conversation. At number 3, I got defenseman Ty Smith for the New Jersey Devils, and then Kevin Lenikainen for Chicago.
Yep. I have Kaprizov. I think he's the shoo-in at this point. I'd find it surprising if anybody else took it. And then I also have, I can't pronounce the name right. You said it, Tyler, Carolina's goalie. He's leading rookie goaltenders. I believe it was in save percentage, and he's getting more game time, and he's looked good. So,
see, the only thing I would add to that is he really he hasn't been there all season.
I know that. That's why it's a bit more. That's why it's a bit more kind of. I don't know, but I think he's been playing well. Then I have Ty Smith on there.
Smith has been good.
He's, I believe, even plus minus. He's a defenseman, and I think he has 15 points.
Yeah, he's
in
got
30 some games.
No, I think it might be less because they missed a couple of games for COVID reasons.
Yeah,
I had it here.
Yeah, but I have Ty Smith in that conversation. He's looking great. And just for reference, he's putting up those levels of points. Last year, Quinn Hughes was a minus 10. And he had, I believe it was 45 or 48. I think it was 48 points last year.
So Ty Smith has 15 points in 29 games, and he's currently at a 0. So he's not a minus nor a plus, which, I mean, that's not bad. You know, he's a rookie defenseman in the National Hockey League, and he's logging an average of 19 minutes of ice time per night.
Yep. So I think he should definitely be in that conversation. Mm-hmm. Chris, who do you have?
Yeah, I got a couple guys. Obviously, you can't not say Kaprizov, so I'm not even going to touch on him. You guys have already gone there. I have Josh Norris from the Ottawa Senators. I think he's been a surprise in Ottawa. I think he's done really well. All the shine's kind of been on, Tim Stützle as that rookie there in Ottawa. But I think Josh Norris has been excellent. Another guy, Jason Robinson in Dallas. He's almost a point per game there. And Dallas has dealt with some injuries this season, COVID as well. And being a point per game is excellent, filling in a big role in Dallas. So I think he's done excellent. Another guy, Oliver Wahlstrom from the Islanders.
Yeah,
he's really fit Barry Trotz's system well in New York, and he's putting up a good amount of points too. I've really liked what I've seen from him, and I feel like that's one player, if you're an Islanders fan, that you should be really excited about to keep on playing, because he's got an excellent shot and he really sees the game, quite well for sure.
Chris, I'm glad that you brought up Jason Robertson, because I was debating on putting him down. But I'm like, I'm a Stars fan, so I can't put him on there. So I'm glad that you came to the table with him. I think, let's move on to the Norris. Let's talk about the Norris here, because it's an interesting race. It doesn't look entirely like how it was last year for the Norris. So, Chris, who do you have for the Norris?
The Norris. I don't think you can disregard, the kind of season Victor Hedman's had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's always been great. He's continued to be that good. So I've really liked what I've seen out of him. Another guy is Jeff Petrie for me in Montreal. Once again, I don't think he gets talked about enough in Montreal of how well of a player he is. He really sees the game well. He moves the puck super quick. He picks his spots when to jump up, and he does it well. And that's why he scores so many goals. And he's been excellent on the back end. I believe he's playing with Joel Edmondson.
Yeah,
I believe those two are paired up together, and they've been Montreal's best pair, and they've been actually one of the best D pairings in the North Division.
Well, and it's been fun to watch because, Edmondson is a completely different defenseman as opposed to Petrie, and they complement each other's games extremely well, and it's proving to work for Montreal. All right,
Yeah.
Noah, who do you have lined up for the Norris?
Well, I had Hedman on there, obviously, and I had Petrie, and I also had Charlie McAvoy.
Mhm.
I mean, lots of people are questioning how Boston's defense would shake out, and I think that he's been excellent. I mean, they've looked good defensively, and he's been a huge part of that. I think that's as simple as you can put it.
Yeah, well, with the departure of Krug, that opened up a lot of opportunity for McAvoy, and I think I agree, he's done a very good job filling that gap and being that cornerstone
And
defenseman
Chara.
in Boston. I'm just talking in terms of logging minutes, that Krug was that big two-way guy, and I think, that's the role that McAvoy just assumed into, and he's done an excellent job with it. I actually have him on in mine as well. Not first though. Hedman to me is undoubtedly the number one guy. He's been extremely good. And actually, I've picked Drew Doughty to slide in at number two.
Same.
I think, he's done extremely well with LA. And I think he looks a little bit more rejuvenated this year. So I think it's deserving of some recognition. And I got Charlie McAvoy third. I got Petrie at fourth. And I threw in a wild card here. This is a defenseman that I also think hasn't been talked about nearly enough. And that's Darnell Nurse for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yep.
He's
Hold on just one second, guys. Tyler, your comment there just reminded me of something. It was news today. It was the Kings just re-signed one of their defensemen.
Matt Roy.
Yeah.
Yes. 3-year extension, 3.15 mil AAV. He's also apparently looked very good this year. I haven't seen as many LA games and I haven't seen that, but apparently he's almost looked as impressive as Doughty or more so to lots of fans. So, I mean, I don't know. Just thought it was worth the mention there.
All right.
That's encouraging for Kings fans too as well, because you're kind of looking at Doughty. He's getting up there a little bit. So to see some defensive players come in there and really see that future defense in LA, because we all know LA's always been a defensive first kind of team, and now to see that those new defensive players come in, I think that's got to be really exciting to be a Kings fan, along with their offensive draft picks, because they got a lot in their system too. So I think it's exciting times in LA.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Vezina, and then let's hop over to the draft lottery. So for the Vezina, I have 3 names, and again, the third one's hinging on if he can keep up his pace. But I have Vasilevsky, Fleury, and Demko as my 3 for the Vezina.
I'd agree. I got Fleury. Actually, Fleury to me is leading it. He's been extremely good, and I think he's one of the key reasons as to why Vegas has been able to be as good as they have been. Vasilevsky at number 2, and I actually wanted to change it up a little bit. I put Kaapo Kähkönen at number 3. I think he's a really big reason as to why Minnesota is in a playoff spot and looking extremely confident in their play. And then Philip Grubauer at number 4. I think that's going to solidify my top 4. I think those are the guys that could win it this year.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there with Kähkönen. I think him and Talbot have been a really good duo. Obviously, I think Talbot came into the season as the starting guy, and Kähkönen's really provided that big 1-2 punch in Minnesota, which I think has been absolutely key. And I wonder if they could have a duel, William M. Jennings with Talbot and Kähkönen. It's possible. Talbot's numbers aren't the best, but it's something to look at. I have Philip Grubauer on my list as well. I think with Colorado hasn't been their same self, so to speak, lately, and I think Philip Grubauer has been phenomenal in that. I'm not gonna touch on Vasilevsky. We've already kind of touched on him. Semyon Varlamov is my guy.
He's been really solid.
Yeah, I think you don't necessarily talk about him a lot. He's once again fitting that Trotz system, benefiting from it, but that's not to take anything away from how well he's really played either.
Well, and he brings this level of consistency to his game that really is beneficial for any team that's looking to make a playoff push, right? Like if you've got a goaltender that's going to come in and stop the pucks every night, you're standing a really good chance. And I know, Noah, you're quick to go on to the NHL draft, but I don't think we touched in on GM of the year, who we think is going to get that. So I've got my top three. I'm going to let you guys tap in first. Chris, who do you got?
Oh, GM of the year. It's hard for me right now to make a decision on that just because I want to see what happens at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I want to see what GMs do and what happens, but I have Toronto's general manager,
Dubas.
Yeah, Dubas. I have him. I think he's made a lot of good acquisitions for the Leafs to really help out Sheldon Keefe. And I think that goes hand in hand with Keefe as well with the Jack Adams. I think he's put a lot of guys in place where if there has been injuries, which there has been in Toronto, that they've been able to sustain their success in Toronto. And I think that's been really key. So I have Kyle Dubas as my front runner right now, but I want to see what happens at the deadline first to make any bold statements on who I think is going to win that. But he's my front runner.
Yeah, for sure. I have Kyle Dubas on there, but again, like Chris said, it's really tough to say before the trade deadline, which is coming up in a few short weeks here, actually. So excited to see what happens with that. I have him. I have Bill Guerin in Minnesota. I think that he's done a pretty good job of actually building up that team's young players, and I think they're in a really good spot now moving forward. Then I have Kelly McCrimmon in Vegas. I mean, I know we expressed on here a lot of doubt about signing Pietrangelo and some of the other moves that they made, but it's working out. So, I mean, credit where it's due, right?
Oh, for sure. And, my top three, I've got Dubas and Guerin in there as well. But actually at number one, I have Bill Zito from Florida.
I like that.
Yeah, he's put a lot of the right pieces in place, and not necessarily big star names, but he brought in the guys that were going to fit Joel Quenneville's system of play, and it's working, right? I look at Gudis, I see Hjalmarsson, right? I look at Verhaeghe, I'm seeing like a Marcus Kruger, right? So I'm seeing guys, he's bringing in guys that are going to complement the system that Quenneville wants to coach. And this looks very similar to some of those Chicago teams that went to win Stanley Cup. So I'm not going to say Florida's going to win the Stanley Cup or they're at that level, but I'm seeing some similarities in how they're playing, and this working right now in Florida.
Yeah, I was considering throwing Zito on here, but the thing that held me back a little bit was that the core of that team was there when Zito inherited it. Right?
Well, yeah, but think about it. With that core, what was that team doing?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I mean, though, even like bringing in Quenneville, like that wasn't Zito. Like, so that's just more what I'm saying. Like, that's why I want to give Zito more time first. But yeah,
because you could say the exact same argument for Kyle Dubas. It wasn't him who drafted all those guys. That was Lamoriello.
Yep. I mean, yeah, obviously. It's tricky again, but yeah, I think Zito, he's borderline on there for sure. So
I think he should be a front runner.
Yep. Oh yeah, fair enough. I mean, like you said, he's brought in some good pieces, so we'll see what happens. I think that Florida is a favorite for the Stanley Cup, and actually I put it on here, but because it's not a personal award. But who do we have for the Cup right now, guys, at the mid-season point?
It's a very tough call because I think there's a handful of teams that could pull it off. I would honestly probably lean towards a team like Toronto. I think they've proven enough resiliency this year. I feel like they have the experience and the physicality added that they lacked last year. I think Matthews looks much more mature in his game this year as well.
Dealing with a wrist injury, I might add.
Yeah, so there's a lot of big signs there. And I mean, Anderson hasn't been that strong, but Campbell, like, he's had some injuries, but when Jack Campbell has been in net, I think he's looked extremely good. So
I think it's his net.
I think it's his net too. So Toronto's in a good spot. I wouldn't count out Toronto. I would say there's also a very good chance Florida could put themselves in that conversation. Same thing for Tampa. I don't think they're going to repeat, but they have the team to push for sure. Yeah, and then I think again, like a team like Minnesota could be a surprise team. They could definitely make a run for it too. So we'll see how things shape out.
I was going to say, like, I agree with lots of that list. A dark horse I have is Pittsburgh because they're in the playoffs right now, and they have lots of winners on that team. Like they have still have some Stanley Cup winners on that team, and I'd say never count out that in the playoffs. So
you know what? They don't have the goaltending to do it, and I don't think they have the depth. If they had a starting, I think if they had a bona fide starting goalie and maybe a little bit better depth, I think I could agree with it. But I don't think they have the team there. And I don't think an aging Malkin or Crosby is going to be enough to do it. I mean, Montreal upset them last year in the play-ins, right? So
yeah. I'm just saying though, I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow pull off an upset at this point. Like I think that Penguins team, like they've done some crazy things. So yeah, for sure. So let's hop over now to the draft lottery. So I mean, there's been a tons of debate about it that I've seen. I've seen lots of people who love it, lots of people who hate it, mainly because Edmonton has seemed to benefit from it immensely. And despite the fact that their team doesn't seem to improve until the last 2 seasons, really, you could argue. And yeah, there's lots of reasons to love or hate the draft lottery system. So I guess the first question, guys, do you think that it's actually fair?
You know what? I do think it's fair. And I'll also add in this. I don't think the team that necessarily wins the first pick actually benefits from it, because we're seeing time and time again. I mean, the Oilers, look how many first round picks they got and look how that organization panned out. You look at Buffalo, they got Eichel. They thought Eichel's going to save them. Well, look how that team is panning out. They got Dahlin. The team still hasn't improved. The real winners on draft day it doesn't matter what the lottery system is. It depends on your scouting department and who you put together. That's how I see it, right? Like people do get salty that Edmonton got the amount of first rounders in that span of time that they did, but at the end of the day, their scouting department and management failed the organization greatly.
Yep. I was going to say, to kind of add on to that, I don't think it's necessarily always on the scouting department. I think it's partially on management developing the philosophy for how they want to build their team.
Well, yes and no. Like, I mean, you look at the players drafted by, say, the Edmonton Oilers. You know, for a while they weren't drafting good players. There was many players that got drafted shortly after where they picked that have turned out to be unreal NHL players. Like Jujhar Khaira was a 3rd round pick. And I don't think anyone can justify Jujhar Khaira being a 3rd round pick. And to me, like, that's saying something, because he played for the Prince George Spruce Kings. So he is in a sense a local boy. It definitely does come down to your scouting department for a lot of it, in my opinion.
Yep. We kind of already answered it. Who do you think has benefited the most from the draft lottery system? In terms of just getting the good picks, I think it's Edmonton, honestly. I mean, they've had the most first round picks, like high first round picks from it, if I remember correctly. So I mean, I think they have to be on there.
But I mean, first round picks, the only ones remaining are McDavid and Nugent Hopkins at this point.
Yep.
And then they mismanaged Hall. They brought in Larson.
Yeah.
And then they traded Eberle for Stone, and I mean for Strome, and that didn't work. So I mean, like, they didn't really benefit from it, and they didn't win anything.
That is the other argument.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, you look at it, and there you look at the Rangers. Look what's happened there. Mismanagement of the players once again. Kakko and Lafreniere this year have been mismanaged. I always look at the game sheets for the Rangers, and they're not getting the minutes. And I just don't understand it. If you're going to get those high picks, use them. And they don't have players that are like clogging up those spots. It's guys that shouldn't be there. in that top 6. I think they need
Yeah.
to play, and I don't understand it. And I think that's where, the disaster kind of comes in.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, that's a great point, Chris, because I think it was the game that the Rangers scored 7 in the second period. I think it was that 7 goals.
7 in the second, 2 in the first. Yeah, 9-0.
Yeah, in that game, in that second period, Lafreniere had 1 point.
Kako nothing.
Kako nothing on 7 goals. Like, that's just how.
Because
Like,
they weren't on the lines that were getting those opportunities.
exactly, right? And that's just embarrassing for the Rangers in my mind. And do you think that they're the new Edmonton in that sense?
I wouldn't say that just yet, but I wouldn't deny the possibility of it becoming that. I think that they could work it out, but it's extremely discouraging to see that, guys like Lafreniere and Kako aren't getting the opportunities. But even then, you can make the opposite point for Edmonton. They gave their kids all the ice, and they didn't have enough experience to mentor. Right. So I don't know. There needs to be a balance in this case for the Rangers.
Sword, for sure.
Yeah, they need a balance. I don't think they found it, but they better find it soon.
Yep. No, I agree. So, yeah, so the NHL did change their system, I believe, going into this year. So, Tyler, do you want to walk us through that quickly?
I think I'm going to let Chris take on this one.
Fair enough. Chris, go ahead.
No, they made it so I believe you can't win the lottery. Was it back-to-back years, I believe?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's what I read. And then you can't jump up more than 10 spots, I believe is the other one. So say you're like, you just missed the playoffs or whatever.
You're not
you can't be getting number 1, I believe is the other one they made, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
I think the draft lottery system as a whole, I think is really good. I think it obviously eliminates the tank, which I like that. But yeah, I think the moving up 10 makes a lot of sense. Just because, do you necessarily deserve that, that pick after being, just mediocre, like say a team like Nashville? They could be like mediocre like they always have been, and then just get blessed with, a top pick.
Yeah.
And it's just like does their management really deserve that?
No.
And that's where I think they made a really good decision doing that 10 spot thing.
Yeah, no. I think that they're good changes. The one thing that I would say is that I wish that the lottery would leave space that if you just missed out on the playoffs, that you could be rewarded more with a better piece potentially to then push you over that edge, right? To eliminate tanking for the best odds, always push for that last playoff spot because that will give you better odds. I kind of wish that there would be that to kind of make it a little bit tighter to the end of the season, but I see the benefits of the way that it is, so I'm fine with it, right? Like as long as it's working. But
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you can tank to the very bottom, and it's still no guarantee you get that first pick. I mean, you look at the year Edmonton got McDavid; they weren't even the worst team in the league. I think they finished, was it like third last or something like that? Like,
yeah, they weren't that bad that year, and then they got the top pick. And I mean, sorry if I'm cutting you off here, but I look at Mike Babcock. I think, do we all hear what he said about saying, "Hey, we're getting a number 1 pick for Matthews"? He publicly said that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So you're either lucky or your plan works. I think it's one of the two, right?
Oh, agreed.
Yep. All right, so I think that kind of wraps up that discussion. So Tyler, why don't you take us out?
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the Rink Masters podcast. I'm really hoping that you guys enjoyed our conversation. Drop down your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.